Heisman Trophy ceremony this past weekend, and the quarterback from Indiana, which has never happened before, Fernando Mendoza, wins the Heisman Trophy. And we had Pavia from Vanderbilt get second. He acted classy during the ceremony, but then he started saying, fuck the voters on Instagram right after. So great job by Diego Pavia. And then we also had Jeremiah Love from Notre Dame, the running back, and Julian Sayin, the quarterback from the Ohio State University, there as the runners up. But the thing I wanted to ask you about this, Jaevon, because when I was down in SoCal this past weekend with my coworkers to cover the high school football state championships, when we saw that Fernando Mendoza won the Heisman, we all thought it was well-deserved, but also it led to the discussion of Mendoza is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Mendoza is the worst Heisman Trophy winner since Troy Smith from Ohio State in 2006, because we ran through the list of names until we got to Troy Smith in 2006, and to us, Fernando Mendoza was the worst Heisman since Troy Smith in 2006. And I feel bad saying that because he worked really hard, came from Cal, came out of nowhere to win the Heisman Trophy, and now he's going to be a high NFL draft pick. But just what was your reaction to Mendoza winning the Heisman, and where does he rank in the 21st century, in your opinion?
I thought the award should have probably went to Diego Pavia. I think his stats overall was better than Fernando Mendoza, than Julian Sayin. I get Julian Sayin had a really, really high completion percentage, like a record-setting one. I just think Mendoza's stats weren't really up to par. I think his team is really kind of up there when it comes down to how good their team is. I mean, hell, they're the number one seed in the whole entire playoff. Mendoza, I think, is a really, really good quarterback. I just don't think that there really wasn't really a guy in this year's Heisman race that's like, that guy is the number one best player in the country. He should absolutely win the Heisman. I don't think we had that this year. I do think Fernando Mendoza was the last guy that everyone saw play, and it just so happens that he beat Ohio State, the powerhouse, the number one team in the country, kind of throughout the entire year, obviously. And for
the reigning champs.
Kind of and I thought Indiana had a really good year. Obviously, going on the road to beat Oregon, that was like their game that kind of catapulted them as being one of the top teams in the country. And then they make the Big Ten championship game, and then they play against Ohio State. They keep Ohio State under They held them to 13 points. And I don't think no one's done that all season. Ohio State hasn't even trailed all season. And they were trailing for the majority of this game. And I do think the world saw that and was like, he's the Heisman winner. And I'm just like, whoa, like, let's say. I thought it should have went to Diego Pavia, just from a stat perspective, from a Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was 10-2 this year. Vanderbilt.
Yeah, but Indiana has been very bad for a very long time. So
they went to the playoff last year, though. That's my only thing.
That's true. That's a great point. That is a great point.
They went to the playoff last year, and Mendoza was at Cal, and he was getting his ass kicked. And Pavia was at Vanderbilt, kind of building up his name, their team, pedigree, and they've kind of built something in Vanderbilt now. And Vanderbilt was if they wouldn't have lost to Texas, Vanderbilt would probably be in the playoff currently right now. And I don't know if they would have been playing the SEC championship game, but they would have probably, if they were 10-1 instead of 10-2, Vanderbilt, or 11-1 instead of 10-2, Pavia probably wins the Heisman. I just think Fernando Mendoza was the last person to play, and everyone saw that, and they were like, he's the Heisman winner. Give him the Heisman now. Mail it to him. I have nothing against Fernando Mendoza. I think he's going to be a top 4 pick. I think it's probably going to be one of the and I did see something that Dante Moore was probably going to stay at Oregon. So Mendoza is probably going to be the highest quarterback drafted this year. So he's a Heisman winner. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback in the league. I just don't think he was the best player. I just didn't think he should have won the Heisman this year. I thought it should have went to Pavia.
Yeah, that's fair to say, and that's how I felt last year. I thought that Ashton Genty should have won the Heisman rather than Travis Hunter, even though Travis Hunter, he did something that we've never seen before. And it's like, that's why Travis Hunter ultimately won the Heisman. But I was in the boat for Ashton Ginty last year. My favorite thing from, I had two things. My favorite thing that I thought was funny from Heisman Trophy weekend was when they took the photo, all four of them together, and Diego Pavia, he was like way shorter than everyone else, even though their height is all listed around like 6'2" or so. And so I thought that was pretty funny. And people like to joke like, oh, Pavia is short, but it's like we've seen that become a problem for a Kyler Murray or even a Bryce Young. Drew Brees is a guy who was great despite being a shorter quarterback. So how that affects Diego Pavia, that's what I'm really interested to see when it comes to the NFL. I think Fernando Mendoza, I think he will translate to the NFL, but I don't know if he has that superstar potential. I think his ceiling is a Jared Goff, Alex Smith game manager type, where he can go out there and get you wins. But is he going to take over a game for you? I haven't seen that yet. I don't know if that's going to translate to the NFL, but he has the intangibles. He's tall, he's got the mechanics, and so I'm rooting for him because Fernando Mendoza has a great story. He seems like a great guy, and so I was happy to see him win the Heisman. But my other takeaway from this weekend, Jaevon, before we get out of here, is I didn't expect Julian Sayin to win the Heisman. I expected it to be Mendoza or even Pavia. But I think the Buckeyes are motivated coming into the college football playoff because you take a look at the media, Jaevon, at the Heisman Trophy ceremony, and there's a video that circulated around TikTok, Instagram, and Pavia and Mendoza and even Jeremiah Love, they are all getting lots of love from the media. Everyone's interviewing them. But you look at the great quarterback from the Ohio State University, and there's only one media member talking to Sayin. And some people were saying, oh, well, the media only goes to New York if they think that their guy is going to win. And so no one thought Sayin was going to win. They didn't have any Ohio press out there to interview him throughout the process. But everyone's looking down on Ohio State right now. They just lost to mighty Indiana. And I believe that Ohio State is going to come into this college football playoff motivated. They're going to win multiple games by a blowout, and then they're going to go on to repeat as national champions. Congrats to Mendoza. Congrats to Indiana. You got your Big Ten championship for the first time ever. You had your first Hoosier win the Heisman, but the Ohio State Buckeyes are going to repeat as the national champions. And I think the Heisman Trophy ceremony only motivated the Buckeyes more. And so that's my takeaways from it. Any final thoughts, Jaevon, before we get out of here? I see you just had to mute yourself, but do you have any final thoughts before I get us out of here?
I do want you guys to be very grateful for Nick Saban, how he gift wrapped you guys, I don't know, Julian Sand and Caleb Downs. They just fell right out of the sky. After a playoff game, Saban retires. Those two guys hit the portal, and guess where they go? Ohio State. Thank you.
God bless Nick Saban. God bless Nick Saban. Thank you, sir. God bless you, because Sayin and Downs, those are two of the guys who are
should be on Alabama right now.
Yeah, they should. They should be on the Crimson Tide, but they're Buckeyes now, and they're motivated after their first loss. Sayin is motivated. I mean, I even looked at it, and ESPN was doing a preview show for it, and they had, if you look at the top 10 prospects for the Heisman, like only the top 4 go to New York. But if you look at the top 10, the Buckeyes would have had 3, and that's Caleb Downs, Julian Sayin, and Jeremiah Smith. And so I think that trio are motivated after the Buckeyes suffered their first loss, and they're ready to repeat as national champions. Because let's not forget, before the Buckeyes started the playoff last year, they lost to Michigan. We haven't even talked about Shaun Moore. That situation started out funny, and it ended real sad. It's still a developing situation, but it's a bad situation. You can look it up if you don't know what we're talking about. But Shaun Moore led the Wolverines to a win against Ohio State last year, and the Buckeyes went into the college football playoff last year motivated. They're motivated again. They're motivated again coming into the college football playoff this season after that loss in the Big Ten championship. And so as a